Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article is about death of Vikas Dubey due to police excess and police encounter. In this particular backdrop, we will take up two important articles. One is on the page 1 of the Hindu, the other is on page 6 of the Hindu. What are we going to discuss in this particular issue? We will focus on why he was gunned down, what has been the conduct of the police in this particular case, and what are the reforms that needs to be brought about with respect to the police encounters. First up, let us try to understand a bit of a background. Vikas Dubey happens to be a gangster. He has about 62 cases on him, and every single act of criminal laws have been enforced on him, whether it is UP Gangsters Act, Gunda Act, or the National Security Act. So this person is a gangster, a rowdy, a hooligan who was based in Uttar Pradesh. Police had invoked all types of laws, and recently he was also accused of killing about 8 policemen during an attempted arrest. After killing all these policemen, he absconded. He was nabbed, and before producing him to the court of law, he was executed by the police officer. Now the question is, why was he gunned down? It is said that he was between two police officers. As they were in their journey, he happened to snatch the pistol of one of the police officers and shot at those police officers. The police officers immediately asked him to surrender. He did not surrender, and ultimately the police acted in self-defense. Ultimately, this brings to an end the life of Vikas Dubey. How did he rise to power? What were his political connections? How was he able to control and influence this region of Uttar Pradesh is what we need to look at. As we have discussed in our yesterday's CNA, we had spoken about criminalization of politics. One such aspect is in the present scenario where criminalization of politics had happened indirectly. What was happening? He was nourished by a wide network of patrons that included the political parties, individuals of influence, as well as police officers as well. He had offered money and muscle power to fight elections. Parties and individuals could not resist the muscle power as well as the money power of Mr. Dubey. The temptation to accept their services was so great that all the political parties were grateful and they merely accepted. So what this means is he grew to the power where he had control of the police officers, the political parties, as well as all those individuals who were of influence. He would not have risen in this hierarchy of criminals had it been bottled up in the infancy stage of his career, but he was allowed to grow all because of this political and police nexus that he had built over number of years. Kindly look into criminalization of politics that we had discussed in our yesterday's CNA. Now this whole act brings into question the conduct of the police officers. Why? Whenever there has been an accused and he is being moved from one place to another, there are set of protocols and procedures that the police will have to follow. Was it followed in the present scenario? No. Why? Because there is a procedure that this person, in case he's committed a heinous act of crime with respect to Vikas Dubey, he has about 6 cases of murder and about 8 cases of heinous act of attempt to murder. So while you know that this person can resort to illegal activities as he's being transported, why was he not handcuffed is the first question. So the major issue is that the procedures of handcuffing a particular accused in this particular case was missing. This points out to the clear failure, incompetence, ineffectiveness of the police administration. The rules, the regulations, the norms that were put up and procedures that were laid were not followed by the police officer. This also means that they were already planning to kill this particular person is some of the questions that are being raised. This also signifies the extrajudicial killings. So these extrajudicial killings, or what we also called as encounter killings, signify that this does not have no place in the liberal democracy. Why? Because we have the symbol of rule of law, and this symbol of rule of law is violated when there is extrajudicial killing that is practiced by the police officers. Therefore, this incident points to lapse of protocols as followed by the police officers, leading to the question of rule of law repeatedly being violated. No one is questioning about Vikas Dubey. He is a murderer. He is the one involved in number of dacoits as well. But this person also has certain rights as guaranteed by the Constitution of India. He has to be brought to the court of law. There is the prosecution to prove the charges. Then there's defense lawyers as well who will stand with respect to this accused as well. So this is a procedure that has been laid by the rule of law. This has to be witnessed in the court of law. But what happens in the present scenario is that police have violated all these laws, and that means the rule of law is getting violated. A fair and a transparent trial cannot be dispensed at any cost, but a trial in this particular case meant that police excesses and encounters have led to ultimate end of a person. This act by the police officers of instant justice will have number of implications. So what are these implications? Let's go back to Hyderabad. There was a brutal gang rape as well as a murder of one of the doctors. What immediately happened was extreme pressure on the police officers. The police officer go about killing about 4 persons who were accused of committing this heinous act. But ideally, they should have been brought to the court of law. Their charges have to be proved and ultimately they will have to be punished. But what happens in Hyderabad is killings by the police officer. We do not know whether the accused were the ones who had actually committed or not. If they had committed, ideally they should be executed according to the court of law. But this was not kept up. So the Cyberabad police shot dead about 4 people. In fact, after this particular incident, people started jubilating. They started celebrating. In fact, courts and even the National Human Rights Commission had also shown little leniency with respect to these cases as well. This ultimately times down to another incident that happened recently in Tamil Nadu. 2 innocent people were killed by the police officers. This means when you are not igniting passions when it has to, because of the police excess, because of the police encounter, this can also incite the police to deliver instant justice, which may also lead to murder of the innocent people as it happened in Tamil Nadu. One, you celebrated, the other, you're questioning the police officers. This means whenever there has been an encounter killing, it is a norm that they will have to be questioned. In case they are not questioned, ultimately there could be a possibility of murder where innocent people are killed, like in Tamil Nadu. So kindly remember, support for such killings by the police will not make a society just. Mob justice is not at all a justice, says this article. All these incidents that we have discussed till now points to certain reforms that has to be brought within the governance. What are these various issues that we have to look at? One is with respect to the police reforms, second is with respect to the police training, and third is with respect to the entire judicial system. When it comes to the police reforms, they will have to be protected against the political influence. But when it comes to police reform, the political masters are not ready to do it. There is lack of political will, which is what needs to be taken up. But the political masters, the political parties and individuals are not ready to bring this key policy reform. Now, when it comes to the police training, they will have to be taught how to be sensitive to the people of India. And at the same time, there has to be requisite amount of infrastructure that has to be built. Why infrastructure becomes important? Because most of the police deaths were not at the hands of the criminals, but as a result of neglect and poor working conditions. They are asked to slog for long hours. They do not have weekends. They do not have public holidays. They are made to work slog repeatedly. So the police training towards sensitivity and building the required infrastructure and recruiting more police officers is another reform that has to be brought up. And the most important of all the reforms is about judicial system, bringing massive changes when it comes to completion of a particular case. When you ask the police officers or people in general, why do they want police to kill these people, or why do the police resort to extrajudicial killings, the answer is justice delayed is justice denied. It takes lot of days for the completion of a particular case. The same happened in Nirbhaya as well. So this means that people are frustrated, the police officers are frustrated, and at the same time people who have influence are also coming out of the jails as well, leading to this particular question as what is the judiciary doing, what are the laws playing in picture, and ultimately means that justice delayed is justice denied. So what we need to do is to revamp the entire judicial system so that when there is a particular case of murder or a heinous act of rape, it is completed in a required number of days. So establishment of what we call fast track courts is the need of the hour. What is the way forward? The Supreme Court in PUCL versus the state of Maharashtra in the year 2014 said that right to life under Article 21 is available to every single person, and that if the state wants to snatch away this particular life, that can only happen with the procedure established by law. So the Supreme Court proceeded to highlight, in case the state happens to snatch away the life, and if it happens to be the encounter killing by the police, this will have to be investigated independently. So in the present scenario, because it is a police encounter where there has been a violation of rule of law, this has to be investigated independently as laid by the Supreme Court. This whole episode ultimately points out that the lawmakers, the law keepers are the lawbreakers. The encounter culture is thriving because there is no apparent lack of popular outrage at these extrajudicial killings, or people have been supporting this very cause for a longer period of time. People should stop celebrating it, and they should ask political parties and the police questions so that the fundamental principles of criminal justice system is upheld, is what this article all about. Now let's look into the next article. This article says reform with caution. The Ministry of Home Affairs has come up with one of the national level committees. What will this committee do? This will look into bringing massive reforms and changes in the criminal law system. What is this national level committee? The committee has several legal academicians. They are experts in this particular field. They have been living in this particular area for a couple of years. What will they do? They will gather opinions from multiple sectors. They will ask what is the issue with respect to this particular law. They will ask their opinion and consult a number of other experts in multiple other sectors and collect all the information and ultimately deliver it to the government of India. And what will the committee look at? The committee will start focusing on the criminal law. When it comes to the criminal law, there are three basic fundamental laws. One is about the Indian Penal Code, which was drafted in the 1860s. Then we have the Code of the Criminal Procedure that was written in 1973, followed by the Indian Evidence Act that dates back to the year 1872. Now the question is, why is that these laws will have to be changed? When you go back to these laws, they were drafted at times where the British were controlling the Indians. There was a master and a servant relationship. The master happened to be the British Empire and the servant happens to be the Indians. During this particular period, the police officers also inflicted massive fear into the people. This fear will currently have to be replaced with what is called as service orientation by the Indian police. So there needs to be massive changes that has to be brought about in the Indian Penal Code, Code of the Criminal Procedure and the Indian Evidence Act. Most of these laws was a gift by the traditional colonial power. There have been changes that have taken place, and even we have introduced massive changes as well. But all these changes have either been because of judicial pronouncements, as we saw in 377, or with respect to adultery, or various other changes with respect to rape, and so on and so forth. But this has all been ad hoc in process. So what we require is massive transformation, and this will have to be taken by a step-by-step approach where we will require consultation as well. So what the government intends is that not the ad hoc process of judicial pronouncements or ad hoc legislative basis, but instead a overall change is required. So the government is taking up all these measures so that these changes can be introduced in the colonial laws. After this notification was released by the ministry, there were few advocates, lawyers, judges, and legal experts who have voiced certain concerns with respect to this move. They are not opposing this initiative, but what they are saying is there are some concerns that the government will have to look at. What are these various concerns? Any law for that matter, or when you're bringing a massive change in the entire criminal justice system where there are three major laws, this will require deliberations, discussions, and lot number of stakeholders and legal experts to voice their opinion. But what is happening right now? This is introduced, or the national level committee is introduced at a time where COVID-19 is in picture. So during COVID-19, if this is introduced, it is not the right time. So this will require careful consideration and deliberation, and this might not happen during the COVID-19 crisis, and the time that is given for these people is very small. So short time frame and limited scope of public consultation is a major impediment to bring this massive change in the criminal justice system, say these legal experts. The panel's mandate also appears to be quite broad. When you look at the terms of conditions, it says to recommend reforms in the criminal laws of the country in a principled, effective, and efficient manner which ensures the safety and security of the individual, the community, and the nation, which prioritizes the constitutional values of justice, dignity, and inherent worth of the individual. When you look at this particular statement, it means the wordings are very vague, and when they come up with a law, they can have multiple meanings to it, multiple interpretations to it, leading to plethora of questions as well as answers to it. So what these legal experts point out is that these words that are used will have to be clear, the references have to be clear, and ultimately they should be pointing out what needs to be done rather than coming up with vague statements and interpretations. When it comes to reforming the laws or bringing massive changes with respect to laws or its introduction, the first institute that comes into mind is the Law Commission. The legal experts in the present scenario are asking a simple question: why appoint the national level committee while you already had the existence of a law commission? In fact, the law commission has the dearth of people. Recruit people into this law commission and ultimately give them work so that they can come up with beautiful recommendations. Instead of giving this to the law commission, why take up or bring up the onus on a new national level committee is another question that they are asking. Lack of diversity in this committee is also making the legal experts question the national level committee. When it comes to the establishment of a committee to bring about massive changes in the criminal justice system, this will require multiple stakeholders. But when you look into this committee, you have most of them who are male, and this is a committee which is mostly based from experts who are from Delhi. That is what is raising the question. What about the females? What about the OBCs? What about the SC/ST? What about people from different states? What about people from Northeast? These are the people whose representation, whose voices will also have to be heard when it comes to transformation of the Indian Penal Code or any other law for that matter. But in this particular case, the lack of diversity also points out certain concerns with respect to the national level committee. As we initially discussed, when it comes to bringing reforms in the Indian criminal justice system, this will require large number of people, legal academicians who have to gather opinion, consult the experts, bring about research, and ultimately provide this report to the government of India. What this means is that all these people employed in this particular business will have to be full-time members. But the problem with this particular committee is they are not full-time members, they are actively engaging themselves in other professional commitments as well. Let me give you a simple example. Let's suppose there is a professor who is in National Law School. He is working as a professor in National Law School and at the same time is engaging himself in this National Law Committee, in this national level committee. This means he is not engaging his complete employability with respect to research and recommendations. He is managing both these jobs. Will he be able to do justice is what these legal experts have been asking. So what is the way forward? We will have to include more experts and we will have to diversify the number of people who are there in this committee. There should be meaningful public engagement, and at the same time we should have a wider consensus on need of speed trials, protect witnesses, addressing the travails of victims, improve investigative mechanisms, and mostly eliminate torture. So because it requires a large scale implementation, what we require is not a short time frame based on limited inputs from the public, but this reform has to take a cautious and an inclusive approach is what we need to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about cooperative federalism. When we speak about federalism, what is it? It is nothing but a system of government. We will have two sets of government. One is what is called as the central government, which is at the national level. Then what we have is the regional or the provincial government, which is at the state level. This is what we mean by federalism. Now, when it comes to federalism, you can again break them into two different types. What is it? One is what is called as cooperative federalism. The other is what is called as competitive federalism. What is this cooperative federalism? When it comes to the cooperative federalism, government, whether the central government or the state government, cannot completely insulate them. They cannot work independently of their own. They will also require some support from the state governments as well as from the central government. So what we establish in this particular scenario is a horizontal relationship between the central government and the state government, which means both are equal and both of them have the responsibility to bring about massive changes in the welfare state. So what happens in this cooperative federalism? What you have is there is coordination between the central and the state governments. They mutually work, they build the consensus, implement schemes and programs so that people are uplifted from the roots of poverty. This is what is called as cooperative federalism. Then we have something called as the competitive federalism. What happens? You have the central government and then you have the state government. There is vertical establishment, which means all the states in India will be of the same caliber, but then what we have is the central government, which is higher in the hierarchy, and there is establishment of what is called as vertical relationship between the central government and the state governments. Therefore, when it comes to cooperative federalism, it is about understanding between the central and the state government, where both are seen as equals, where they cooperate, where they coordinate and ultimately bring massive changes when it comes to the welfare of the people. But when it comes to the competitive approach, what it means is that these states are competing amongst themselves. They want to improvise constantly, bring massive changes. Why? Because there is incentive that is being given by the central government to the states, and the states are competing with the central government as well. Why are we discussing this? That is because the author brings into light that cooperative federalism and its principles have been violated periodically with time by the central government with respect to the state governments. He draws into comparison two different periods. One is with respect to the 1980s and the 1990s. He compares that era to the present era of 2014 up until now. Back in the 1980s and 90s, what we have is Congress, which had huge numbers in the parliament. What did the Congress do back then? In case there were regional parties, which was not a national party, they could destabilize the regional parties. How? By calling in 356 of the Indian Constitution and enforcing the president rule. So this, he says, defeats the whole purpose of cooperative federalism. This was during the 1980s and the 1990s. He draws a comparison to the present generation of 2014 up until 2020. What does the author says? He says the present NDA government, which is currently in picture, headed by the BJP government, is also having similar issues when it comes to the cooperative federalism. How? In the present scenario, the author says that principles of cooperative federalism is getting violated. Why? With the establishment of the 14th Finance Commission and with the implementation of the GST. How is that it is getting violated with 14th Finance Commission recommendation? According to it, about 42% of the funds will have to be devolved to the state governments. This is what the 14th Finance Commission said, and the states were in fact happy because they thought they could bring massive changes to the welfare programs. And at the same time, there is the GST. The central government said that the state governments will have to surrender some of their taxing powers. The state government did surrender as well, and the central government said that we would be providing providing all the revenue losses to the state governments. With the actual facts of the 14th Finance Commission and the GST, the states were in fact happy about it. But then comes the following issues. What he says has been violating the cooperative federalism, which means the central government and the state government are not working in equality, and there are certain violations, is what the author says. What are these violations? First is with respect to the tax devolution. The tax devolution to the state currently given by the 14th Finance Commission is about 42%, and these are the projections, but according to the author, because of slowdown in the market, the amount of money that is reaching the states is comparatively less, so the states are not able to bring massive changes in the welfare program, says the author. The second important issue is because of the shortfall in the GST, payments from the central government to the state governments were delayed, and as a result they are not able to bring new policy initiatives and also bring changes when it comes to their implementation. The third issue is with respect to the central cess. When it comes to the taxation, what you have is the collection of the money, and this money that is collected will be divided between the central government and the state government. But when the center imposes the cess on a particular service or on a particular good, this entire money goes to the central government, and the central government need not have to share this money with the state government. This, according to the author, is again a violation of the cooperative federalism. During these testing times of COVID-19, states are spending more and the central government has completely left its responsibility, says the author. Why? Because the state governments are spending on the health issues, they will have to look at the citizens, they have to provide the essential services, and they have to let go all their taxation due to GST as well. So what the author says, that this principle of cooperative federalism is again getting violated because the central government is not spending as much as it has to during this COVID-19 crisis, but it is the state governments which are spending massively on the health sector as well as on the essential service sector, is what the author says. The author finally brings what is called as the fiscal responsibility and budget management. This is about the fiscal consolidation. This is also about the fiscal health of the government. This is somewhere around 3% of the GDP. It is speaking about reduction in the fiscal deficit. In case there is an emergency, unforeseen circumstances, there is something called as escape clause. This basically will give a provision of about 0.5%. What the author says is, in spite of increasing to about 3.5% of the GDP during the COVID-19, the amount of money spent by the central government is not efficient or sufficient, says the author. The author then also brings into picture the perspective of the state governments as well. This is increased from about 3% to about 5%, but there is a small catch with respect to this issue. What is it? About 0.5% increase is unconditional, so they would be able to increase the fiscal deficit, but another 1.5% is conditional, and this conditionality is bringing about privatization of power distribution and bringing about enhancing the revenue of urban local bodies, which the author says should not have been put by the central government. So all these issues that we currently discussed with respect to tax devolution, GST, center stress, state spending more, FRBM violation means that the cooperative federalism between the center and the state gets violated in the name of cooperative federalism, says the author. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says solar energy will play big role in Atmanirbhar Bharat. Prime Minister Narendra Modi recently inaugurated 750 megawatts power project in Rewa district of Madhya Pradesh, and this was inaugurated via a video conferencing. During the launch, he also said that solar energy would play a major role in achieving self-reliance in energy, essential for the self-reliant India. During this inauguration, he comes up with a beautiful statement. He says that solar energy is sure, pure and secure. kindly make use of this statement in your answer writing. What does he mean by sure? It means that all other sources of energy can be exhausted. They can be over with respect to time and they can get depleted as well. But the sun's energy will never get depleted or exhausted, and this is bound to shine forever. So this is a meaning of sure. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also brings into an analogy of what he says that solar energy is pure. What is this pure? When you look at the other sources of energy like coal or petrol, they are polluting the environment. They also increase the carbon emissions. That will not happen with respect to the solar energy, as they do not pollute the environment. Instead, they protect us by reducing the carbon emissions, says the Prime Minister. Finally, he brings into an analogy of secure, which is about inspiration for the Atmanirbhar Bharat. So in order to bring about massive reduction in the import, the government says that it will bring about new set of projects. One is with respect to the manufacture of PV cells, batteries and storage equipment, which is an invitation or an assurance that the people of India can be assured or secured with respect to the solar energy, which also brings in an idea of self-reliant India. How self-reliant India? Because the government is planning to come up with all these key projects with respect to manufacture, storage and batteries, which is required for the solar projects. Also remember, when it comes to the power distribution, Delhi Metro will use about 24% of the electricity produced from this particular plant, and Madhya Pradesh will use the rest that is coming from this plant. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says, after Camelback, drones used for cross-border smuggling. What is the context? Pakistan-based syndicates and terror outfits smuggle drugs, weapons, other illegal goods on Camelback across the vast Thar desert in Rajasthan through well-contained food couriers. This happened in the past. In the present scenario, terrorists and smugglers from Pakistan are now using drones or the UAVs. Why? Because they are using it to escape all the detection while dropping arms and drugs in India from across the border. This issue is not something which is new. This has been persisting from a very long time, and when such issue has persisted, what were the steps taken by the Gujarat police in the past is what we have to look at. So some of the measures taken in the past with respect to the Gujarat police include employing of the people called as Puggies. Who are these Puggies? They are people with traditional knowledge of reading camel footprints. Where are they found? They are found in the region of Kutch and Bankantha near the Pakistan border. What is the traditional knowledge that they possess? From the footprints, they would be able to track the direction in which the camel has traveled. This helps in tracing the smugglers, terrorists and also refugees across the western border through this particular desert. And the Gujarat police had also enrolled what is called as Friends of the Police. These are people who are located in the border areas. They could act as spies for the police officers. They could understand what is happening in the border areas, and they provided all information to the Gujarat police. So going forward, we can also employ such people in the border areas so that information can be given to the police officers in Rajasthan is one such recommendation. So what is the way forward? In terms of border security, drone jammers may not prove to be effective. So the government and the police officers will have to look for viable option of surveillance and detection which can be explored in the near future. And at the same time, we also will have to come up with a new smart border management system to prevent any types of issues that are surfacing in the near future. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article is called as Do We Need a Fiscal Council? This is a very important article and this will be explained in our economy this week. Now let's look into some of the preliminary practice questions. The Hanoi Summit was a meeting between United States of America and North Korea. Why have we taken taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following are correctly matched? AH-64E Apache attack helicopter USA, CH-47 Chinook helicopters France, Mi-35 helicopters Russia, Polestar UK. Which of them are correctly matched? The answer to this is 1 and 3 only. Why? Because CH-47 Chinook helicopters also belong to United States of America. Polestar is also called as Dhruv, and this is indigenously manufactured by India. So the answer to this is 1 and 3 only. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. Now let's look into the next practice question. With reference to styrene, which of the following statements is or correct? Styrene is an organic compound with the formula C8H8, which is a derivative of benzene. It is stored in factories as a liquid but evaporates easily and has to be kept at temperatures under 20 degree. It is a flammable liquid used in the manufacture of polystyrene plastics, fiberglass, rubber and latex. Which of these are correct? The answer to this is 1, 2 and 3. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. As an update to this industrial accident, as we all know, when there are critical functions, this will require experts. This will require people who have an idea about how to control the pressure. But in the present scenario, what we see is when it comes to discharging of the duties of the engineers, they were just science graduates or intermediate passed out, and these were not experts is another concern with respect to the industrial accident. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following statements. This region is surrounded by Gulf of Aqaba. Strait of Tiran connects two water bodies. Its coastlines touch Mediterranean Sea and Red Sea. The country in question is? The answer is Egypt. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. Now let's look into the next practice question. Despite having large reserves of coal, why does India import millions of tons of coal? It is the policy of India to save its own coal reserves for future and import it from other countries for the present use. This is wrong. Most of the power plants in India are coal based and they're not able to get sufficient supplies of coal from within the country. This is right. Steel companies need large quantity of coking coal which has to be imported. This is right. So the answer to this is 2 and 3 only. Now let's look into the mains practice question. Selective suspension of rule of law for instant justice violates the core principles of criminal justice system. Examine. What do you understand by cooperative federalism? Explain recent examples where this principle was violated. Please write all your answers on the comment section. Ensure that you have a peer review and also come up with constructive criticism. This is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.